All right, let's talk about the blank show. We're diving into how Match Game completely rewrote the rules of television. This is a story about a show that was so funny, so chaotic, and so wonderfully inappropriate, it literally changed comedy forever.
So let me ask you something. What do all these viral word puzzles we're obsessed with today have in common with a game show that's like 50 years old? It seems like a stretch, right? I mean, think about it. We are in a total word game renaissance right now. You've got stuff like the New York Times Strands, you've got Wordle turning into a TV show. Even classics like Jeopardy, Password, and Catchphrase are bigger than ever. We're just obsessed with wordplay. Well, the answer to that question, it connects all of this stuff. It's a story that involves some seriously fast wit, a whole lot of shameless innuendo, and a panel of some of the funniest people to ever grace a TV screen. We are, of course, talking about the one, the only Match Game. Let's get into it. Okay, so first up, Saved by a Blank. And believe it or not, this story doesn't start with a bang. It starts with a show that was pretty much dead in the water. See, back in the 1960s, the Match Game, well, to put it nicely, it was kind of boring. It was super tame, the questions were bland, and honestly, NBC was about to give it the axe. It was on the verge of being canceled for good. So in this last-ditch, Hail Mary pass to save the show, the writers made a pivot. A huge one. They started leaning into these risqué fill-in-the-blank questions, and the whole vibe just shifted. You can see it right here. It went from something totally innocent, like name a kind of muffin, to Johnny always put butter on his blank. You see the difference? That one little blank, it changed everything. And that move, that pivot to naughty, double entendre humor, it didn't just save the show. NBC actually uncanceled it. Then, a few years down the line, CBS grabs it, reboots it as Match Game 73. And that's the version that just explodes into this massive cultural phenomenon. So how did this whole thing actually work? Well, the beauty of it was its simplicity. The format was brilliant because it was basically designed to create the most comedy and chaos possible. It was so simple. The whole point of the game was for a contestant to try and match answers with a panel of celebrities on these hilarious fill-in-the-blank questions. 2 contestants, 6 celebrities, and a whole lot of laughs. That was the formula. And man, the questions were the absolute engine of the show. They were everything. Take a classic one like this. The 97-year-old man said, "Whenever I go streaking, I always take my blank." You can just imagine the studio audience erupting, because everyone's mind immediately goes to the funniest, craziest place. And then came the payoff, the celebrity answers. For a question like that, you might get a really cheeky answer like, his wife. Or, something a bit more straightforward but still funny, like his cane. And yeah, contestants got points for a match, but let's be real. The real prize was just how hard everyone was laughing. But as great as the questions were, they weren't the secret sauce. No, the real magic, the thing that made this show a legend, was the people. You had Gene Rayburn as the host, right? The perfect ringmaster, just barely keeping this circus in check with that iconic skinny microphone of his. But the heartbeat of the show was the panel. The chemistry was just electric, especially between the core players. You had Brett Somers, who was just this witty, sharp-tongued queen. Then Charles Nelson Riley, her flamboyant, over-the-top comic foil. And of course, Richard Dawson, the charming one who the audience just adored and who was surprisingly good at the game. Look, the main game was a blast, but the bonus round, that's where things got serious. It's where fortunes were won, and, well, where a pretty big feud started to heat up. So the bonus round was called the super match. Here's how it worked. First, you had the audience match, where the contestant had to guess one of the top answers from an audience poll. Then, for the really big prize money, they'd go head-to-head with one celebrity. And for years, pretty much every single contestant picked Richard Dawson because he was just that good at matching answers. Now that first part of the bonus round, the audience match, it got so popular that producers thought, hey, there's a whole show here. And they were right. They spun it off into a little show you might have heard of called Family Feud. And guess who they got to host it? Yep, Richard Dawson. And this is where the drama really kicks in. So by 1976, Dawson is hosting Family Feud while he's still a panelist on Match Game. He's getting burnt out. Then in '78, Match Game decides to introduce the Star Wheel.
Suddenly, a wheel decides which celebrity the contestant plays with in the bonus round. Dawson's guaranteed spot, his whole thing, was gone. He was reportedly really upset, and by the end of that year, a weary Richard Dawson was gone from Match Game for good.
So finally, let's talk about its timeless legacy. Because even after all the 70s glitz and glamour faded away, the spirit of this show, man, it lived on, in ways you probably don't even realize. The influence of Match Game is everywhere. I mean, first off, it literally gave birth to the format of Family Feud. Its reruns are still on TV all the time on networks like Buzzer and GSN. And hey, if you've ever watched RuPaul's Drag Race, the entire Snatch Game is a direct, loving parody of Match Game. More than anything, though, it proved that a game show didn't have to be just a game show. It could be a full-on comedy riot, and that set a whole new bar for television. So it all comes down to this one big question, right? Was the crazy, chaotic charm of Match Game just a product of its time? A perfect storm of 70s culture that we can never get back? Or did they accidentally discover a timeless formula for fun that we're all still trying to recreate today? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me on this one.